Good afternoon. Welcome to the Business Broadcast. My name's Nikki Larkin. I am the MD and founder, MD of Grunge Accountants and founder of Succession Planning. And I'm with my lovely partner from Succession Planning, Nigel Elkes. Hi, Nigel.
Hi everyone. Hi Nikki. Thanks for the invite.
Pleasure. So, just a couple things just to make sure you're in the right place, everybody. So today we're talking about the recipe for an easy business sale. So we're talking about data and documentation. So before you knock off going to sleep on that one for your afternoon siesta, it's actually a really essential part of the sales process. It might be the boring part, but it's actually often the part where the deal can break down. Also, it's the part where you can potentially need to be strong and for potentially even arguing up your price or at least maintaining your price. So really, really important. One of our colleagues came up with that they've seen statistics where 50% of deals fail at this stage. So really, really important to get this part right to ensure you get through to the finish line.
And
Okay.
just to add, that's not our deals, by the way.
No, not our
So
deals.
this
No,
is the reason for this.
of course not. No, because we know what we're doing. But in a lot of other ones, there's some rookie mistakes that are made. Also, just one other bit of housekeeping. We are live, so please do post your questions in the comments box, whether you're watching on LinkedIn Live or on YouTube. Please do pop in your questions, comments, even if it's just to say hi, because it's really nice to see who's out there. It's a bit overcast here today. So people probably aren't out there sunning themselves today or burning themselves to a crisp like the rest of the week. So please do say hi, ask us questions, make the most of it, because we want to make sure that today's session is as relevant for you as possible. So it's particularly relevant if you're going through a sale, you're expecting to go sell your business at some point, or if you're an advisor at some point or assisting in the sale process at some stage. So, Nigel, we were talking earlier. Yes, we do a little bit of prep occasionally, and we were talking. We today we're going to split it into two sections, aren't we? First of all, we're going to talk about what good due diligence looks like and the characteristics, and then we're going to go through the practicality. So it's really important. Do stay through to the end, and you'll hear the real sensible, practical tips on how to make sure that your data is first class. So, Nigel, we were talking about due diligence and the data, and what are the particular aspects from that look good and the things that we're looking for to feel that it's good, reliable data?
Yeah, just before I dot onto that, just to sort of
Sure.
really echo what you were saying there, and it's so important because this, what we'll go through, absolutely helps maximize the price and will really help the speed of your sale and the progress of it. So when people say, what's my business worth and how quickly can I have a sale? If we get this bit right and we prepared correctly, we will maximize the sale, or it'll be a strong element to help maximize the sale, and also will help the speed and progress of the sale through from initial inquiry really to completion. So that, I think that's the importance of it, and some of it, the basic points, but equally we can run through some examples of where we haven't had the information, and it's certainly slowed up the process hugely. So sorry to go a little bit
No,
off
absolutely.
piste.
We want this a bit practical thing. So, it's really good. We don't want people to have gone wrong, but where people have gone wrong, it's great to learn from those times. So, or equally where people have done a great job, let's copy them.
Absolutely. So firstly, it's it's the timeliness of getting the information, the speed of information. If a buyer wants to know something, the quicker we have a sort of in our internal service level agreement, we have that sort of 24-hour process. Well, actually, we have quicker ones than that, but we sort of say within 24 hours, and that's what we'd say to any of the clients that are engaged with us. We like to respond to buyers within 24 hours with the information, and so that speed also shows that we know our figures, or more so, the seller knows the figures. They've got a good handle on the information, and it's easily accessible. So the timeliness of it is absolutely key. It goes without saying the accuracy follows quickly behind, and depending on the size of the company and what systems you have internally, and basically what your internal procedures are, it's imperative to get accurate information. And so, not just from the account side of things and then presenting management accounts, but making sure that is all up to date and there's not stray debtors or stray creditors on those listings, or and everything is correctly accounted for. So one, that's precisely right and presented well, but then also when we're doing forecasting and we've got different customers in there, to be basically consistent with that throughout. And I think if there are any changes, and so a typical sale would probably take certainly 6 months, maybe 9 months, and sometimes longer. And so sometimes we're talking to buyers throughout that period, and they would then be looking for up-to-date management accounts. What's the forecast now? And so there's rationale that needs putting in to back up the figures of the forecast. So if you are changing data, explain why, explain what's happened, be transparent all the way through, because in fairness, there's no point, it's just saying this is us. And basically anything that sort of differs away from that, the buyer will lose confidence, and so therefore they'll go away, and then that one in the shortlist has moved away. But it's imperative, and it's also imperative that we're consistent with it from a point of view of it comes from the same source. So I'd
Absolutely.
say that.
Yeah, I was going to concur with that, because I've seen, we've all seen in different businesses, you may have the finance people have got a forecast, sales people have got a forecast, and then the MD might have one. You need to be consistent with which forecast is the one being presented, and if it then an updated one's given, understanding the journey why, because forecasts do change. Unless you're doing the whole transaction in a week, the forecast will have updated and will change, because that looks, it's very poor. I've seen where a salesperson has sent across a forecast, different format completely to what the finance person had been presenting, which of course was in a beautiful fashion. It just doesn't, it just loses confidence with the buyer. So you really need to make sure that it's consistently formatted, consistent basis. Any changes are documented, so it's understandable, because there's nothing wrong with things changing. Are you expecting to deliver a project now? It's been put back by 2 months by a client. That's fine. It's still the same revenue. It's just different timing or something. But you need to be able to explain why these things are, and so that the buyer has confidence in these figures and data.
I think also it's and one thing that just sprung to mind there is the consistent lines of communication, and to keep your broker within those and let him or her deliver those figures, and again, where sometimes things go awry is where a a buyer starts, once they've had a couple of meetings, starts to go direct,
Mm.
and then puts the seller on the spot a little bit. So always use your broker as that buffer, and then one, it gives you thinking time. Two, you're not put on the spot. Three, sometimes there may be another meaning to a question or whatever it is. So it's important that that sort of that formality is maintained as well once you've started sort of in dialogue with them. So yeah, sorry, it just sprung to mind as you
No,
were going through that,
absolutely.
Nikki.
It's my fault if I've said, but we haven't been through the communication bit, have we, as yet? Or did you
There's
just slightly touch on it?
really, on that, I was just sort of saying, basically, to keep the communication to, I did the accuracy, Nikki.
Yeah, I suppose
Uh,
because it all goes through all of
yeah,
these things, doesn't it? That's it. The communicate, it comes through the timeliness, the accuracy, the changes in it. It's all part of the thing, but it's having that consistent voice, communicating quickly, communicating in a in a simple fashion as well. Not condescending, but like in layman's terms as well. Because although they might be in the same sector, it might be different. So you might be having to educate the buyer a little bit through it as well. So it's having that communication, and then it's the relationship as well with that goes with it.
no, absolute. Sorry, I think I rolled it into one, and I didn't give you
Yes, no,
time
I
for
think
your
you did.
cards.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's fine. It's just like I was like, oh. Okay, super. So this is the bit that everyone needs to hear. So definitely, turn your volume up, listen in now. So practically speaking, Nigel, what should the seller, because we're talking about sellers today, what should
yep.
the seller be doing with their broker and their advisory team to make sure that they get that data, the data room, all the information, all through the sale, marketing, everything, make it right? What are your top tips? What should they be doing?
Um, it's really to have an early meeting, as early, even before you start potentially marketing your business, and even when you're still running it. So it's probably introducing some of these good practices. So if you, I'll give you a couple of examples. So that there's a they're about £10 million turnover, a company sale going through at the moment, and every bit of information that's been requested, they've delivered it in a timely fashion. They've known their numbers. They've been accurate with them. They've also got workflow systems, so really they can drill down into basically any element of the process. And to have that, one, helps you run your business a lot better in any event, but two, it shows the buyer you've got a huge handle on the figures. It's done in a timely fashion and it's accurate. Now it's not all about the accounts and numbers. Some of it, other examples may be professional services, not accountants, Nikki, but maybe solicitors practices, where some of the smaller ones may not be sort of having everything as sort of stored digitally. For example, wills. So if somebody's buying a solicitor's practice, they need to know what's there, what the workflow is, what the mix of work is, and everything. And certainly, like, but it's a little bit specific, but maybe with wills and probate work, it's how many basically are being held, how many is the solicitor
How many wills are in the files? Yep.
yeah, how many they're executor for, those type of that sort of information. So if you're in a particular sector of business whereby your your role and your functions should have this type of thing digitized, then it's worthwhile doing all that before we go to market, really, because people will want to see it. So the to get an early meeting and the preparation is absolutely key. So, and what I would say is it doesn't have to be expensive. So the people we use, well, they're actually called the Cabinet Office. They're not the Cabinet Office. They're called the Cabinet Office Wales, and they would do high speed scanning. They document it. They'll then come and collect whatever it is, all 100% secure, and it just means that you're then prepared for your sale when sort of asked those questions. So it is the preparation, and in some respects it's not worth starting until we've got that, because again, as we said earlier, if somebody inquires about, may I see this, may I see that, then a delay slows the sale. It doesn't look good, and it then doesn't instill confidence with the buyer. So certainly the early meeting and the preparation are sort of key elements. Then I think it's to sort of really put yourself in the buyer's shoes. You know your sector, you know your business. What will they be looking for? What will they want to see? How do you prove that you've sort of this is your robust income stream? This is how you've made your living all your life. The sort of sales analysis, have things in a real presentable format, and just then broadly think, what would any buyer like to see? And again, Nikki, I hope, because the early meeting and the preparation were the ones that I put down, so
Yeah,
I
early
might have pushed them
meeting,
into one.
preparation, but buyer's, yeah, thinking about putting yourself in the buyer's shoes.
Absolutely.
And have you mentioned the checklist?
Again, sorry, and I do apologise. I could do with all your little list there, but as well as the financials, as I just sort of mentioned, that the proving the customer list and the how all the income comes about and the sales analysis. But equally, it's as I said with the will example, it's then how does the company make its money, and having all the sort of the framework that is also digitized. So it might just be leases, it might be it might be any certifications and things like that. So all that and all the checklist that's relevant for your sector should then, be in that data room for when we go to market. And so
Yeah, I quite like the data rooms when they're split by the different divisions. So, you've got the section that's all the HR stuff. So you've got all the the employment contracts, all the different policies and procedures and things relevant to HR, and that any potential, because what the buyer wants to say, is there any potential claims coming, any active things there? Then you've got the legal section, so you've got all your contracts, like you've said, all the leases, like you've said, all of those, anything that you've got, because anything that you, especially SMEs, when you're growing to begin with, you just you get relationships, you do things, and people don't actually necessarily always have it all in writing. But this is definitely the time when you need to have your service agreements, your supplier agreements, your contracts with your clients. They all do need to be in writing, data library, check that they've been signed, are they dated, all the compliance things, so whether it's anti-money laundering or GDPR, all of those things, everything in that library, so that when the buyer looks, they will then have a really good confidence and go, yeah, they know what they're doing, yeah, there's very little risk here, yeah, I can see all of their taxings, yeah, all filed, all paid on time, beautiful, no penalties. In fact, actually, that's interesting. Well, as much as tax can be interesting. One deal that I was involved with, I think it was 2 years now, 2 years ago now, and there were being purchased by a Middle East company, and they were very, very careful. They wanted to know, in fact, was one of the things, they wanted to know that there hadn't been any penalty. So even if, or interest, even if something was paid a day late, they wanted to know. Luckily, there wasn't anything. It was a purely beautiful one. But they were very adamant about that. They had this thing, I don't know whether it was a sniff test or, it was principles, whatever it was. But, the very, very adamant, we had to print everything off to show, everything paid all on time for the last few years, whatever. So, there's certain things that different. So although you might have the same things in most data libraries, the buyer often does focus slightly more biasly on certain things that they're interested in. It could be because they've been burnt before. It might be the insurance, making sure the insurance, everything's insured properly. It could be, are there any active legal cases going on? Such as, if you've got hundreds of staff, it's quite often you will have some sort of grievance process going on. I mean, I know one business I worked in, there was about 1,000 staff. Guaranteed, there was always at least one or two going through the motions at a time. It was considered a cost of business. Other places are just be nice to their staff. But so it's lots of different things, but it's having that structured, and you do need to have that librarian type attitude, whoever's managing it, to keep it in order. If you don't want to have different versions of the same document in there, making sure it's the very final version in there, making sure it is the documents that are the signed versions, and you need somebody that likes doing that kind of thing. When I was young, I did want to be a librarian when I was very, very young. I thought I could just read books all day. So, you need someone that is good at doing that to manage that, because, it's, in some ways it's just meticulous, in some ways low level work, but it's actually can make or break a deal if you've put in the wrong blimmin' thing in there. It doesn't then stack up against what you were forecasting or planned or whatever. Okay.
I think that's exactly right, Nikki, and I think just to add in there, some of it is, obviously we don't need a sledgehammer to crack a nut in some situations, so it's kind of then thinking who the buyers are, what they'd be looking for, and this is why a sort of initial conversation is so important, because it's sometimes that prep work, and we wouldn't want you doing, or business owners having to do work or do something to think, that's what I'll do before I sell my business, because sometimes the buyer pool don't need that, and more so this, again, slightly just with the whole raft of information that's required. If you're a sub-1 million pound business, sometimes the depth it's still all the different categories, as Nikki said, but the depth of information analysis, as long as it's transparent, may not be required, and some buyers will take a view and it'll be, in the warranties and guarantees and things like that. So but that whole list and the checklist is sort of imperative to go through, but we'd help guide anybody that wants to discuss it. So
absolutely. So just to wrap up, you were telling me about a deal that's gone really, really well. Did you want to just mention about that? And it was a good example of where they did follow the rule book.
I did touch on it earlier, because that was the sort of the 10 million pound one, really, who's 10 million pound turnover, but their systems and their processes and their availability of information was so strong and available instantly, and they completely knew the numbers, and it just instills confidence in the buyer all the way through. So it's not just a one-off asking for the information, it's continual when they're obviously
Yeah.
doing their due diligence and looking at it. So that, that's imperative. And so probably the key for smaller companies is really to think big and try and not sort of spend loads of money to then have all the systems in place, but to just make sure you've got sufficient. So if you were looking at your business, you had, the relevant information computerized. And I say it's not just accounts, it may be CRMs, it may be pipelines, it may be just the actual products, or workflow. So yeah, I think it's very impressive when you see that, and it makes a sale so much easier, and it also helps the pricing and helps it get across the line, which is what everybody wants.
It used to be, I remember one of the first deals I did, which was a long time ago, and it was just before we started doing more on electronic data rooms, and it was a physical library with stacks and stacks of lever arch files, and it does generally look like a library because it's an awful lot of data there, but now at least it can all be electronic, but it's still making sure it is, even things like make sure it is scanned right. If it's a squiffy, badly done scan, it just looks rubbish. Presentation is important too. But anyway, that is really good. Thank you so much, Nigel. What I just wanted to go through is for next week, we are talking very differently, but well, it's probably important for when you do get to due diligence, but we're talking about different accounting systems and accounting apps and things. And I've got a lovely associate that I know, Lars Swan, who runs his own practice, but he's a real expert on the latest technology for SMEs, owners, and businesses for using the right software, because there's just so much out there is going out all the time, so it's hard to keep up, but he definitely keeps up. So he is going to be talking about different software next week, which should be great. Whether you're a Zero or a Sage or a QuickBooks or a free agent champion, and all of the other ones as well, we'll be able to talk about the latest apps and what links best and what's good for you. So thank you very much, Nigel. Have a super weekend.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody out there. And do also let us know of any suggestions of any other topics that you would like us to cover in the future. But in the meantime, have a lovely weekend. Cheerio.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.